The frozen Ardennes before dawn on December 16th, 1944, felt like the world was holding its breath. The sky hung heavy with snow. The ground was hard as iron, and the only sounds were the distant rumble of tanks and the faint crack of frost beneath soldiers' boots. At Monschau, German columns advanced through a haze of fog and white silence, confident that surprise and numbers were on their side. They had fought on the Eastern Front, faced Soviet artillery, and survived. They thought they understood what was coming. The predictable rhythm of war. Artillery strikes, impacts, and pauses, with the safety of foxholes and trees as faithful allies. But that morning, the rhythm of war changed forever. Shells screamed overhead, not to bury themselves in the frozen soil, but to detonate midair. Each explosion unleashed a rain of steel and splinters, a deadly storm that came from above. Foxholes offered no safety. Trees turned into shrapnel, and soldiers who had once trusted the earth itself now found it betraying them. Men who had endured years of fire and blood on the Eastern Front suddenly realized the rules of survival had been rewritten. Behind the lines, one man's decision had triggered this transformation. Colonel Oscar Alfred Axelson of the 406th Artillery Group faced an impossible situation. His thinly spread reconnaissance unit was being overrun by waves of German infantry. Conventional artillery couldn't stop them. The enemy simply pressed forward. Desperate, Axelson made a decision that violated every standing order. He told his gunners to load the secret shells. These were no ordinary munitions. Inside each one was a new and terrifying technology, the proximity fuse. Originally restricted to anti-aircraft use, these fuses contained miniature radar systems that could sense how close they were to a target and detonate at the perfect height for maximum destruction. They were the Allies' most closely guarded secret, rivaling even the atomic bomb in security. With no permission, no orders, and no time left, Axelson gambled everything. The moment those shells flew, he not only defied his superiors, he changed the course of the Battle of the Bulge. Within minutes, German formations advancing confidently through the fog were torn apart by explosions from above. The attack stalled, men froze in disbelief, and chaos spread through ranks that had moments earlier been unstoppable. The fuse itself was a triumph of human ingenuity. Born from the minds at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory and assembled by over 100 American companies, it was a miniature miracle of engineering. Inside a metal casing the size of a coffee can sat over 130 tiny components. Vacuum tubes, circuits, and a delicate transmitter that can endure the brutal acceleration of 20,000 GS when fired. When the gun fired, the shock crushed a small glass ampoule, activating a chemical battery that powered the radar system. The shell would fly, spinning violently, sending out radio pulses, and when the reflected signal from the ground or a body matched the set frequency, it detonated with ruthless precision. These were the first smart weapons in history, shells that could sense their environment and decide when to explode. And by late 1944, American factories were producing tens of thousands every single day. The effort rivaled the Manhattan Project in cost and secrecy. Factory workers, many of them women, labored in silence, never told what they were making. Each fuse carried a serial number, every component inspected under magnification, and failures ruthlessly discarded. By December, production lines ran around the clock, a fuse completed every 2 seconds. On the battlefield, the effect was nothing short of apocalyptic. Bursts 30 to 50 feet above the ground blanketed entire areas in lethal fragments. In the forests of the Ardennes, where trees had once given cover, the airburst shattered branches into wooden daggers that scythed through men and equipment alike. Foxholes became traps, tree lines turned into zones of death, and movement under the open sky was suicidal. The 101st Airborne at Bastogne, surrounded and outnumbered, used their limited supply of proximity-fused shells to devastating effect, breaking assault after assault. German soldiers spoke of shells that knew where to find them. At the Sauer River, the results were even more horrifying. German troops attempting a night crossing believed darkness and fog would hide them. Then American artillery opened up. No adjustment, no ranging fire, just perfect detonations over the river. When the firing stopped, more than 700 bodies lay frozen on the ice. It was a massacre so sudden and precise that General Patton himself called it the most devastating artillery I had ever witnessed. For the Germans, confusion reigned. When their units captured proximity-fused shells, their scientists refused to believe what they saw. They couldn't accept that electronics, fragile, glass-filled tubes, could survive the shock of artillery fire. Some declared it a trick, a decoy, or magnetic device. Ironically, Germany had once led similar research before the war, but Hitler's impatience had killed the project years earlier. Now, facing the same idea perfected by their enemies, they had no answer. Meanwhile, the American industrial effort behind the weapon became a legend in itself. Companies like RCA, Sylvania, Crosley, and General Electric abandoned peacetime products to mass-produce the fuses. Radios and refrigerators gave way to killing machines of microscopic precision. Workers inspected every solder joint by hand. Accidents were hushed for secrecy's sake, and even the simplest error could cost lives on the battlefield. By the winter of 1944, America's factories had achieved the impossible, transforming consumer industry into a weapon of technological dominance. In tactical terms, proximity fuses changed everything about how artillery was used. Before them, gunners relied on forward observers to spot, adjust, and correct. With these new shells, perfection wasn't required. The fuses corrected themselves in the air. Accuracy became less important. Lethality multiplied. Coordinated barges that detonated overhead at the same instant created what soldiers described as a wall of steel and fire. Veteran SS units at Elsenborn Ridge were obliterated by such fire. Entire companies disappeared in seconds, and survivors spoke of losing their will to fight. Even the elite, once unshakable, began to panic when faced with invisible death from the sky. But beyond the destruction, there was something deeper, a moral reckoning. The proximity fuse symbolized both the brilliance and the horror of modern warfare. It was created by scientists who believed they were shortening the war and saving lives, yet the result was a weapon that left no place to hide. It was war stripped of mercy, precision turned into terror. Still, the cold arithmetic of history cannot ignore its impact. The proximity fuse shortened the Battle of the Bulge, saved thousands of Allied lives, and hastened the end of the war in Europe. After the war, its legacy extended far beyond artillery. The technology of miniaturization, radar sensing, and automated detonation became the foundation of guided missiles, satellites, and modern electronics. Dr. James Van Allen, one of the engineers behind the fuse, would later use similar principles to build instruments that discovered the Earth's radiation belts. In that sense, the proximity fuse stands at a crossroads between destruction and discovery. It marked the dawn of a new era, one where science could dictate the outcome of battles and technology could reshape the future of nations. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, amid the snow and smoke, innovation met desperation. And in that collision, the mathematics of death were rewritten. From that winter onward, warfare would never again be the same.